Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with the mighty Jingles. And finally, we have the first British Royal Navy warship in World of Warships, and it's none other than possibly the most famous of them all, the grand old lady, HMS Warspite. This ship had a list of battle honours longer than the menu in a Chinese restaurant, even more than Lord Admiral Nelson's flagship, HMS Victory itself. More battle honours than any other warship ever to serve in the Royal Navy throughout its 1,000-year history. More battle honours than any warship that served for any nation in World War II. This grand old lady has a long and glorious history. She was launched on November the 26th, 1913 from the Devonport Royal Dockyard in Plymouth and formally commissioned into the Royal Navy on March the 8th, 1915, at which point World War I was already underway. The Queen Elizabeth class battleships were constructed as super dreadnoughts, which meant they had more firepower, thicker armour, and they were just bigger than preceding dreadnought warships. What made HMS Warspite and the other Queen Elizabeth class battleships so special was her firepower. These 15-inch guns, which had gun barrels that weighed 100 tons each and were mounted in turrets that weighed 750 tons each, were quite simply the most powerful rifled cannons fitted to any warship anywhere in the world at the time she was launched. These ships could dish it out, but they could take it as well, which was just as well because that's exactly what happened to the Warspite during her first ever battle in May 1916 when she engaged the German fleet at the Battle of Jutland. During the first day of the battle, at about 4 PM, HMS Warspite and two of her Queen Elizabeth class sister ships, HMS Malaya and HMS Valiant, were heavily engaged with German battleships. During violent manoeuvres to avoid a collision with HMS Valiant, Warspite's steering gear was jammed, causing her to steam in circles, exposing her to heavy fire from German guns, although apparently also drawing fire away from the heavily damaged HMS Warrior, which probably saved the ship. After two full turns, Warspite was once again under control and came to a heading against the attacking German fleet. However, earlier damage had made it impossible to fire more than one of her gun turrets against enemy targets. Warspite was saved from annihilation only when the German fleet was forced to turn and run from the guns of the British Grand Fleet. Warspite suffered 15 direct hits from German 11-inch and 12-inch shells. Her engine room was taken on water and her speed was reduced to just 16 knots. When she finally regained steam pressure, she was ordered to return to Rosyth for repairs. Between the two world wars, the Warspite was extensively upgraded. In 1924, she entered into a 2-year dry dock period, had her two smoke funnels removed and replaced with a single larger funnel. Her beam, or the width of the ship, was widened to 104 feet to allow for anti-torpedo bulges to be implemented along her hull. Deck armour was also increased. Between 1934 and 1937, the Navy decided to upgrade their Queen Elizabeth class battleships as a whole. The entire propulsion system was stripped out with a much more modern arrangement. The original 24 boilers were removed in favour of 6 new individual boiler rooms. The new engines increased power and endurance and saved weight, which allowed the Warspite to once again take on even more armour and even more weapons, particularly anti-aircraft guns. By the time the old girl came out of refit in 1937, she was once again the most powerful warship in the world. Warspite's first action of the Second World War would occur at the Second Battle of Narvik in 1940. Almost a third of the entire German Navy's destroyer force were trapped in the confines of the fjords around Narvik, and it was just too good an opportunity for the Royal Navy to miss. It was decided to attack them with overwhelming force. HMS Warspite, accompanied by 9 destroyers and with aircraft support available from the carrier HMS Furious should it be required, proceeded to engage in one of the most one-sided naval battles of the entire Second World War. It wasn't without its risks, however, because as well as the German destroyer force, also lurking in the fjords around Narvik was the submarine U-64. The U-64 would in fact soon enter the history books, although for all the wrong kind of reasons, as it was spotted from the air by one of the Swordfish spotter planes launched from the Warspite, piloted by Petty Officer Pilot Frederick Ben Rice. His observer had just suggested that they may as well turn round and head back to the ship, when Petty Officer Rice replied, "Hang on, there's a U-boat down there." He had in fact spotted the U-64, moving away from a jetty at the small settlement of Björkvik. He then put the aircraft into a dive. With floats on a Swordfish, you couldn't actually carry a torpedo, but you could carry a pair of 250-pound armour-piercing bombs and a pair of 100-pound bombs, and it was one of these armour-piercing bombs that struck the U-64 just below the conning tower, sinking it in less than 30 seconds. The U-64 therefore earned itself the distinction of being the first submarine to be sunk by battleship-launched aircraft since World War I, and the first German submarine to be sunk by aircraft of any type in World War II. Meanwhile, Warspite's Swordfish observation aircraft then spotted the German destroyer Kulner tucked behind a corner of the Ofot fjord at Djupvik, preparing to torpedo whatever came around the corner of the fjord next. Forewarned by the spotter aircraft which circled above, HMS Bedouin and HMS Eskimo came past Djupvik with their guns and torpedo tubes trained to starboard. Their weapons soon turned the Kulner into floating wreckage, while the German ship's own shells and torpedoes found no targets. Not long after, Warspite's great bulk nosed around the corner, with her 15-inch turrets also trained to starboard and guns at minimum elevation. A few foolish members of Kulner's crew who'd stayed behind now fired her remaining torpedoes. Arthur White, a junior rating on HMS Eskimo's A-turret gun crew, saw Warspite's response. There was a rushing noise just like a bloomin' express train. Put the fear of Christ in us. We wondered what the hell it was. All of a sudden this destroyer and the cliff behind it just blew up. 2 full broadsides of 8 15-inch guns and 4 6-inch salvos slammed into the German warship. As a member of the A-turret gun crew, Able Seaman Banks was partly responsible for this carnage and recalled, "Warspite had immediately turned to starboard, suspecting the enemy's intention would be to torpedo us as we passed. As we did so, we saw the enemy torpedo tracks, but due to us turning towards them and presenting a much smaller target, they all missed. In the next few seconds, all hell was let loose. Both A and B turrets fired, and we couldn't miss from that range. Imagine what it's like with 4 15-inch shells, each of them weighing nearly a ton, packed with high explosive, hitting a thin-skinned destroyer." The destroyer Kulner quite simply ceased to exist. The 1940 Norwegian campaign was a victory for Germany, but it was not a happy experience for the German Navy. They did manage to sink the old British carrier HMS Glorious and her escorting destroyers, but the German Navy's losses were heavy. 5 cruisers, in addition to the 8 destroyers sunk at Narvik. Throughout the war, the German Navy was going to be badly handicapped by a lack of destroyers, and Warspite and her hunting pack can be held directly responsible for that. From March the 27th to the 29th of 1941, HMS Warspite, along with her other Queen Elizabeth-class sister ship HMS Valiant and HMS Barham, took part in the Battle of the Mediterranean Sea off Cape Matapan, near Greece. The Italian fleet had 1 battleship, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers and 17 destroyers. The combined British and Australian fleet consisted of 1 aircraft carrier, 3 battleships, 2 light cruisers and 17 destroyers. The British fleet had less ships but greater firepower, and they had around about 80 aircraft on hand. The Italian ships had no radar, and so they couldn't spot British ships except by lookouts with binoculars. HMS Ajax found the Italian fleet at night, prompting the British battleships Barham, Valiant and the flagship HMS Warspite to close in unnoticed to within 3,828 yards. Therefore, the British battleships opened fire on the Italian ships at point-blank range. The Italian ships were illuminated by searchlights from the British vessels, and gunners witnessed the Italian cruisers' main turrets pop out of the hull and blow up into the air. The outcome was a major British victory, as losses included only a single aircraft, with 3 dead and 4 cruisers lightly damaged. The Italian fleet suffered heavy damage, with 3 heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers sunk. The battleship Giulio Cesare was heavily damaged and lost over 2,300 men. In September of 1943, while supporting the Salerno landings with offshore gunfire, Warspite escorted the Italian fleet into internment at Malta after their formal surrender to the Allies. Back on station, she was bombed by German aircraft with 3 Ruhrstahl Fritz X-bombs, anti-ship wire-guided glide bombs. It became one of the first operational attempts involving precision-guided anti-ship missiles. 1 bomb penetrated Warspite, exploding in the No. 4 boiler room and destroying the boiler. A second missed Warspite directly, but managed to blast a hole in her hull at the waterline. The hole on the port side allowed 5,000 tons of water to gush in, causing a total loss of power throughout the ship. The damage that she sustained in this attack forced her to be towed back to Malta for immediate repairs, and then made her way back to Britain, where she was laid up in dry dock for the next 9 months. However, she was back in action in time to bombard Sword Beach during the amphibious landings of Operation Overlord in D-Day. At the start of November 1944, the British were pushing to take the port city of Antwerp, and Warspite supported the Allied landings on the island of Walcheren while stationed at the mouth of the Scheldt estuary. As the Allies moved further inland and the Germans retreated, land-based targets for the Warspite went out of range of her 15-inch guns. Warspite was no longer needed as a bombardment ship, and the war was essentially over for this grand old lady. She was placed in Category C Reserve on February the 1st, 1945. Due to a worsening condition, the decision was made that she be sold for scrap in 1947. During the tow to the scrap heap, Warspite broke loose, defiant to the last, and ran aground in Prussia Cove, Cornwall, her crew insisting that she'd attempted to make a break for the North Sea instead of allowing herself to be broken up for scrap. And all of that is why you can take your Yamatos and your Iowas and your Bismarcks and you can stick them where the sun don't shine, because there is only one ship I have been waiting to see in World of Warships, and HMS Warspite is it. So, they'd better have done a good job of it. Let's see what it's actually like in the game. HMS Warspite will set you back 7,500 gold in World of Warships, and many people are claiming that it is quite simply not worth the money, and they're saying that for two reasons, and they're both to do with the 15-inch guns. First of all, it takes this ship 72 seconds to rotate the guns 180 degrees. That's almost a minute and a half. It is very, very slow. The other reason is that the guns have a maximum firing range of 16.3 kilometers. Well, as far as the turning speed is concerned, yeah, okay. I mean, these are 15-inch guns. These turrets all weigh 750 tons each, and they're both supporting two 100-ton gun barrels, so 2 degree per second turret rotation. It does sound about right. As for the 16.3 kilometer range, however, that's a different matter entirely. And it does seem a little suspicious, considering we're talking about a ship that, with these 15-inch guns, scored one of the longest recorded hits in history of a moving ship firing and hitting another moving target, when a shot from the Warspite at a range of 24 kilometers, not 16.3, 24 kilometers, hit the Italian warship, the Giulio Cesare, during the Battle of Calabria. But the thing is, World of Warships doesn't deal with maximum gun ranges. What we see in World of Warships is effective gun ranges as the maximum ranges of our guns, otherwise the distances involved would just get out of hand. The Yamato, for example, with its 18.1-inch guns, can fire a shell out to a range not far short of 50 kilometers. It doesn't get even close to that here in World of Warships. Instead, we have the maximum effective range of the guns as the hard upper limit on how far the battleships can fire their shells. Having said that, however, 16.3 kilometers does still seem pretty poor for a battleship equipped at Tier 6 with 15-inch guns. And I think, and this is purely my own speculation, but my guess would be that the reason we're seeing that here on the premium version of HMS Warspite is because it is the premium version of HMS Warspite. My guess would be that when the Royal Navy is introduced into World of Warships as a complete tech tree with destroyers, cruisers, battleships and aircraft carriers, we're going to see, at some point in the battleship line, the Queen Elizabeth class of battleships. And in 1941, the Queen Elizabeth battleships, like the Warspite, were fitted with a modification to their gun turrets, which allowed them to elevate the guns by an extra 10 degrees from 20 to 30 degrees, and this increased the maximum range, and therefore also the maximum effective range of their guns. And it would not at all surprise me if what we're actually seeing here in World of Warships in the premium version of the Warspite is the 1937 refit version of the Warspite, and not the 1941 refit version of the Warspite, which will be available as an upgrade, for example, to the Queen Elizabeth class battleships in the fully implemented Royal Navy tech tree in World of Warships. And that, I suspect, is the main reason why this ship can only fire out to a maximum range of 16.3 kilometers. Of course, while all of that may make perfect sense, it is absolutely no consolation whatsoever to anybody who has just handed over 7,500 gold and bought themselves a Warspite with its 15-inch guns at Tier 6 and found out that its guns can only fire out to a range of 16.3 kilometers. However, all is not lost, because the Warspite has a couple of tricks up its sleeve. First and foremost, the Warspite is a very stealthy ship. On the surface, it can only be spotted from a range of 14.2 kilometers. That's incredibly stealthy for a battleship. The Fuso, by comparison, the other Tier 6 battleship in the game, can be spotted from a range of 18.9 kilometers. Now, this isn't going to matter that much at the start of a battle, when the enemy battleships aren't going to be spotting you for themselves. It's the destroyers on the enemy team that are ranging ahead of the battleships that are going to be spotting you and lighting you up for the rest of the enemy fleet. You are likely to take damage in the initial stages of a battle. But in the later stages of the battle, when the destroyers have been wiped out along with some of the cruisers, and the battleships on the enemy team are having to spot their own targets for themselves, well, if you're close enough to a Fuso, for example, for him to see you and start shooting at you, he's inside your gun range as well. And you're a hell of a lot more manoeuvrable than a Fuso. It's relatively easy to dodge incoming fire in the Warspite, and that's because of its incredibly tight turning circle of only 550 meters, which is almost half of the turning circle of a Fuso. And that tight turning circle obviously has other benefits, because not only is the Warspite very good at dodging fire from enemy battleships and even enemy cruisers, but it also makes it incredibly difficult. If you're even paying slight attention to what's going on around you, it makes it incredibly difficult to hit the Warspite with torpedoes. Even on those rare occasions when you're not paying attention and you do take a torpedo hit, torpedoes never seem to do full damage against the Warspite, and that's because of its incredibly thick 330mm of belt armour. I have taken a couple of torpedo hits in the Warspite, and torpedoes that should be doing anything between 12.5 to 15,000 damage, and the most damage I have ever taken in a single hit from a torpedo is 6,600, and that's because of the anti-torpedo belt armour. Another thing that I have noticed about the Warspite, and this may just be my own imagination, but the Warspite does not seem to get citadel penetrations very often, and I mean doesn't seem to suffer from citadel penetrations very often. And it may be because, I mean, if you look at the ship, you've no doubt noticed that she is very short and fat, and due to this design layout, I suspect the case may be that most of the critical damage compartments within the ship are actually located at or below the waterline, which at the kind of ranges where the Warspite is able to return fire at you, makes it difficult for you to penetrate and score a citadel penetration. I have suffered citadel penetrations in the Warspite, but it tends to be at extreme ranges, the kind of ranges where the Warspite is still trying to get within shooting range of you, and plunging fire coming from heavy battleship guns, arcing above and going down through the decks into the citadel does occasionally happen, but it's a very rare occurrence. I should of course mention that the old lady also has a very good anti-aircraft armament. She has 4 twin-barreled 102mm guns, she has 11 20mm anti-aircraft guns, and she has 4 8-barreled 40mm anti-aircraft guns. Yes, that's right, 8 barrels. She has a pretty good defensive anti-aircraft armament. Her secondary gun batteries certainly seem to be pretty dangerous as well. Those 4 double-barreled 102mm anti-aircraft guns also count as secondary gun batteries, and mounted in the sides of the ship, as you can see in the barbettes there above the torpedo bulges, are 8 152mm guns. I do like the Warspite. Obviously, I really wanted to like the Warspite because it's my favourite ship in the world ever. And as many of you probably were when you logged in and looked at the thing on the tech tree, I was horrified when I saw the 72-second 180-degree turret rotation speed, and I was appalled when I saw the 16.3 kilometre firing range of their guns. I thought, oh my god, Wargaming, what have you done? And those two stats are both very bad, but you can still do well in this ship. The thing is, the Warspite is not. It's an unusual choice for Wargaming to put in as the first British warship in World of Warships, but it's not a newbie-friendly ship. You have to know what you're doing to make the most of this ship. It's like jumping into World of Tanks after you've been playing the game for an hour and buying yourself a Tier 8 heavy tank from the premium shop. If you do that in World of Warships with a Warspite, you'll suck just as much as Tier 8 heavy tank drivers in World of Tanks who've only been playing the game for 2 hours. You do definitely need to know what you're doing. And here we are in what is quite possibly, well, it's not possibly, it's quite definitely the single worst map in the game for anybody at the wheel of a Warspite Queen Elizabeth class battleship. There is no concealment on this map whatsoever. There is absolutely no way of sneaking up undetected on the enemy ships, because there's no cover on the ocean map, and yet here I am, already shooting at enemy warships without having taken a single dose of return fire myself. How did I do that? I kept an eye on the spotted locations of enemy destroyers. I didn't go anywhere near them, and since I can only be detected on the surface from a range of 14.2 kilometers, which is well inside my own gun range, I'm able to start shooting at the enemy ships, despite the fact that my range is only 16.3 kilometers, before they can start returning fire at me. It's not easy to do, but that's why this is not a newbie-friendly ship. Now, here come the enemy torpedo bombers. That's 2 spreads of torpedoes. So I start killing the throttle, and I pull a hard turn to port. The Warspite does lose a lot of speed in the turns, but this is actually working in my favour, and that was a very well-aimed spread of torpedoes, but only one of them hit me, and it only did, well, less than 6,000 damage. It didn't even hit me in the torpedo bulge. That hit me in the armour at the front of the ship, where the torpedo bulge doesn't cover, and it still did less than 6,000 damage, rather than the 11 or even 12,000 damage that you'd expect an air-launched torpedo to do. And my anti-aircraft armament shows that only half of those torpedo bombers make it back to their carrier alive. Now, it's important that you don't confuse tight turning circle with quick rudder shift time. They're 2 entirely separate things. The rudder is slow to turn, so you don't react very quickly to sudden developments like suddenly spotting a bunch of torpedoes appearing in the water ahead of me, for example. So I start to turn, but I do take 1 torpedo hit, but again, it's only 6,000 damage. It's not the full, and these of course were ship-launched torpedoes from a cruiser up ahead of me, so these are 610mm torpedoes. They should be doing 15,000 damage, and it barely did 6,000. Killed that cruiser. Now, my damage control ability is still on cooldown from stopping the flooding caused by the first torpedo hit, so I can't actually use it to stop the flooding from the second torpedo hit. It's still on cooldown. What I do have at my disposal, however, is the battleship-only damage repair ability. It doesn't stop the flooding. My damage control teams are still hard at work doing that manually, but it does mitigate the damage that I'm taking from the flooding by restoring a portion of my ship's health. I'm right in the thick of it now, of course. There's enemy ships all around, and I'm not actually scoring. In fact, I don't think I scored a single citadel hit on enemy ships at all throughout the course of this battle. This is quite literally, it's not just the first game I've played in the Warspite, it's the first game of World of Warships I've played in over a week. I've obviously been away in Poland broadcasting for the Wargaming League World of Tanks Grand Finals, so my shooting is a little bit off. But the shots that I am landing on target, while they're not scoring any citadel penetrations because my aiming sucks, they are doing consistent even that wasn't a citadel penetration. But it was 6 good hits on target. So yeah, he's not feeling very clever anymore. Now, my damage repair ability is back up, but I'm not going to use it because my manual, if you like, there you go, the flooding has stopped by itself. I noted that the flooding was about to be brought under control, so I didn't bother wasting my damage control ability. I've still got it available should I need it. And I don't have an awful lot of health left. But I don't really need it. We are winning this quite handily. I am still taking hits, and that was a lot of damage. Okay, that was a lot of damage. It wasn't a citadel penetration, though. I can see some torpedo bombers coming in. This guy is giving me problems. We're going to have to take him out. Is that an enemy Warspite? Oh, the traitor. There we go. Shots out. Here come the torpedo bombers. I scored another hit on him. I'll start turning in towards these torpedoes while killing the throttle. The thing that you've noticed, there we go, perfect. And that right there is the Warspite's manoeuvrability, not just dodging torpedoes, but also dodging enemy gunfire. That was a full broadside from another Warspite. 8 15-inch guns, not one of them hit. Which was kind of handy, because if they had, I would have been in a lot of trouble. One thing that I've noticed about the Warspite is that while it is very manoeuvrable, once that rudder starts to bite into the water, it bleeds off a lot of speed when you're doing sharp turns. From its 24 knot top speed, when you pull a sharp turn, it'll slow down to about 18 knots. But you can use that to help you avoid fire, because you're not just changing course, you're also changing speed. And in combination with, as I've been doing throughout the course of this battle, rapidly decreasing my speed manually, it makes it incredibly difficult for people to land accurate shots on you, both with guns and torpedoes. Of course, that sharp turn, well, I got him. That sharp turn meant that I couldn't broadside that, dodged more shots, but I couldn't broadside that enemy Warspite. I could only fire my 2 forward A and B batteries at him, but that's still 4 15-inch guns, and it was enough to take care of him. Now, this game is pretty close, and there's an enemy cruiser and there's an enemy battleship. That's a Fuso, and I think it's a Phoenix. And they're determined to finish me. Obviously, I'm on low health. I'm in their gun range. I'm a dangerous battleship. Obviously, they're going to want to take me out. So I think it's going to be full speed ahead and manoeuvre, because my damage repair ability is on cooldown and it's probably not going to be back up. I need to get my ass into that cap circle and start manoeuvring to avoid fire from this Fuso and that. I'm pretty sure it's a Phoenix. And you can quite clearly see that they know they need to finish me off. The only problem, of course, is that when you are manoeuvring to avoid fire from ships like the Fuso with its 12 14-inch guns, it makes it difficult to get your guns pointed at the target, because the ship turns a hell of a lot faster than the gun turrets do. Taking fire there from the Phoenix. I think it's only light damage. I'm not really worried about getting shot at by a tier 4 cruiser. Another friendly Warspite manoeuvring to cut these guys off, and again you can see the amount of shots that are landing around me, but because I'm manoeuvring they're just not hitting. There's that Phoenix. Get some shots out, and hopefully they'll start switching their fire to this other Warspite behind me, you can see there, who is now in secondary gun battery range of that Phoenix, which means that Phoenix is in a lot of trouble. Actually, we'll talk about secondary gun batteries in a moment. I'm inside the cap circle now, and we've just about done this. Bringing the guns around. Can I get a shot into that Phoenix? We're about to win by capping. This was a close game. There was not a lot in it, and there we go, game over. Just as I was frantically hammering the fire button there to try to get another kill, but it was not to be. Just short of 200,000 credits earned, although most of that, well, not most of that, but some of that was from completing 2 missions in my first game of World of Warships in a brand new ship in over a week. So that wasn't too bad, especially considering it was on the ocean map, and there is no concealment on here whatsoever. And it was quite surprising to see that I finished second. Second on experience earned. First, of course, being another Warspite. Hooray, God save the Queen. Now, before we go any further, I'd just like to give you an example of the kind of ferocious beating that this ship can take. Please ignore the idiot in the Nicholas-class destroyer in front of me who wasn't watching where he was going. And I make no apologies for this. He does actually manage to, by some miracle, get out of the way, but I'm turning to avoid being torpedoed, and if he wants to drive in front of me while I'm doing that, well, that's his own problem. But just have a look at the volume of fire that's being directed towards me here. I had the full and undivided attention of the enemy aircraft carrier, as well as 2 enemy battleships, 3 cruisers, and 4 destroyers, for something like 4 minutes. And it took that long for them to put me down, due to a combination of violent manoeuvring, my secondary batteries. I mean, I was getting to within secondary battery gun range of most of the enemy destroyers here, as they were all making torpedo runs on me, while taking a continuous battering from enemy battleships and cruisers. And just look at the amount of damage that the grand old lady can soak up. There we go, there's the first actual solid hits that have been scored on me, but it's destroyers firing at me from within the smoke screen, so it's not doing a massive amount of damage. Those that are hitting in the first place, thanks to the way I'm throwing the ship around. More torpedoes in the water. Looks like 2 spreads launched from a destroyer that only has twin torpedo tubes, easy to avoid. Just look at how you can throw this ship around. It's like driving a cruiser armed with 15-inch guns and a metric ass-ton of armour. There go the secondary batteries. The secondary batteries on the Warspite have a range of 5 kilometers. If you fit the secondary battery upgrade equipment module, you can increase that range to 6 kilometers. Once your commanding officer is sufficiently experienced, you can take the advanced firing training skill, and you can have your secondary gun batteries firing out to a range of 7 kilometers. You can also take the commander crew skill, which increases the accuracy and effectiveness of your secondary batteries. And, well, let's just say I don't have any problems dealing with destroyers. Oh, torpedo spread in the water, noticed it late, throw the ship around, and I take one torpedo hit. If I had been... Look at that. Look at the speed of those torpedoes. That's a Japanese destroyer for you. If I had been in a Fuso class battleship, I would be dead now. At least 5 or 6 of those would have hit. I would just be dead. But the Warspite dodges them like a boss. Of course, now I've not only made a sharp course change, I've also decreased rapidly and violently. So while I'm still taking light damage from the close range fire from the destroyers in the smokescreen, you just saw a barrage from an enemy Fuso class battleship completely miss. That, as you can see my anti-aircraft guns going off, was a strike from a flight of dive bombers. There's more torpedoes in the water, but I'm manoeuvring so violently none of them are even coming close. The ship's on fire, my damage control ability is on cooldown. But look at this. Secondaries are opening up to the left and to the right. I'm practically surrounded by enemy ships here, as well as coming under continual air attack and long-range fire from 2 enemy battleships and a whole bunch of cruisers. There are destroyers all around me, but this ship just takes the beating and finally succumbs to concentrated enemy fire from destroyers, cruisers, battleships and air attack. She might be short, she might be fat, she might be ugly, but this ship is as tough as old boots. Well, moving on swiftly, and I have a hell of a game here for you. This was the 3rd game that I played in the Warspite. Now, as you can see, this is the kind of problem that you are going to have to deal with when you're playing a ship that only has a 16.3 kilometer main gun range. Enemy battleships, they're well outside of my gun range, and they're not spotting me. There are obviously destroyers closer to me that'll lighten me up for these guys, and there's nothing I can do about this other than make best speed and try to get into cover as quickly as possible, use my damage repair ability to mitigate the damage that I am taking at the start of this game. I'm manoeuvring as violently as I can. I am taking a lot of damage, and this right here is the reason why people are saying the Warspite is a bad ship. Yes, in this kind of situation, the Fuso is clearly a superior ship, but he can't maintain that advantage forever. At some point, if he wants to keep that advantage, he's going to have to start turning away and running away from me, and we'll see what happens then, later on. For now, this is the guy that was spotting me and enabling those 2 Fusos to start putting shots in at me, and he has very foolishly sailed within my 6 kilometer secondary gun battery range. And, well, you can see what happens to him. Oh yeah. Unfortunately, we've lost a cruiser. They've lost a destroyer. They're about to lose another one. There you go. And we have just lost another cruiser. And that's not a very good exchange. But now I'm safe from fire. It doesn't take that long, even when you do start getting shot at, providing you're manoeuvring intelligently and using whatever cover is available. It does not take you that long to weather the storm of fire that you are inevitably going to take in the Warspite at the start of a game, as the enemy destroyers spot you for the longer ranged firepower on the enemy battleships. And I am, of course, a battleship, so I have a damage repair ability, and I've used it, and you can see that despite the hits that I took in the start of the match, I'm not actually looking too bad. If you're the kind of person that doesn't like taking damage, then you don't want to be in the Warspite. Right? You are going to take a lot of damage in this ship. The ship can take it, it's just a question of whether or not you can. Now, there is another Warspite with us over here. So basically we've got 2 Warspites and a couple of cruisers against 2 Fusos and 1 enemy cruiser. Now, the Fusos do have superior damage per minute. They only have 14-inch guns, but they've got 12 of them. We have 15-inch guns, but we only have 8 of them. So, you'd think that the advantage would lie in the hands of the Fuso, and I'm really not finding that to be the case. Here you can see we're now within range of these guys. Now, the scores are not looking too good because, well, the enemy team have capped A and C, and none of our team seem to be too keen on rushing forward to cap B. But these Fusos are now having to turn away and try to open the distance on the 2 Warspites that are shooting at them. And they're also being shot at by a Cleveland there. You can see the fire coming in from the right hand side of the screen, and the Cleveland is about to enter the cap circle, And he's going to have that island between himself and these two fusos. There he is there. He's a very, very good Cleveland driver. So the advantage, as you can see now, he's starting to cap, is starting to swing our way. These fusos are starting to take consistent damage. And if they want to maintain the range advantage over the two Warspites that are now closing in on them, they're going to have to turn away. And when they turn away, they lose their firepower advantage, because you can no longer point all 12 of those 14-inch guns at the ships that are pursuing you. Let's see what we can do. Shots out. At the moment I have the advantage because I'm able to fire all 8 of my 15-inch guns at this guy. You can see his forward gun turrets are still turning around, and a good solid hit. No citadel penetrations yet, but we're doing solid, reliable damage to him. So this is good stuff. They've lost the cruiser. There's just these two fusos left now. And you can see the Cleveland up ahead, who is now capped A, and the team have capped B. He's steaming around the corner, and he's about to start putting fire into these guys. I'll fire shots out. He hits me. I take more hits. I do take a lot of damage there, but I deal a lot of damage in return. That was a citadel penetration. That's almost 19,000 damage. And that fuso is suddenly in a very, very bad position. The Cleveland is about to come around the side of the island and have a lovely broadside on this guy. It's just a question of who can fire and finish him off first. I've used my damage repair ability. I took a big, big hit there, but look at my health. There go the shots from the there go the shots from the Cleveland. And yeah, he finishes him off while my shots are still in the air. So we've gone from a situation where they had a destroyer, a cruiser, and 2 Fuso-class battleships against our 2 Warspites and 3 cruisers. And all they have left is 1 Fuso-class battleship. And everybody says that the Fuso is far, far better than the Warspite. But, well, it doesn't really seem to be the case, does it? It all depends on the circumstances, and that's why the Warspite is not a newbie-friendly ship. You have to know what you're doing to take advantage of the Warspite's strengths and minimise the Warspite's weaknesses. And I'm just knocking this guy's gun turrets out, which is, of course, reducing the amount of firepower that he's able to return back towards me. If that guy decided that he needed to start exploiting the Fuso's advantages, he just can't do it anymore. Once he's within my gun range, he's committed to fighting me. And that's because if he was to turn tail and steam away from me, he's just knocked out one of my gun turrets. You cheeky Japanese bastard. Well, I've just knocked out another 2 of his gun turrets. His firepower is gone. That's another strength of the Warspite. Its turrets are more heavily armoured than the turrets on the Fuso. And if he was to suddenly decide to turn tail and steam away from me to try to regain the range advantage, to try to put his ship at a range where he could shoot at me and I couldn't shoot at him, well, it's too late, because he's already gotten himself within my gun range, and I'm just as fast as him. And while he's running away, he can only fire his 2 rear turrets at me, so that's 4 14-inch guns. And while I'm giving chase, I can only fire my 2 forward batteries at him, but that's 4 15-inch guns. So I still have the advantage. And he's sailing into all kinds of trouble here. And bingo. Again, not a citadel penetration, but a good, solid 15-inch shell hit. Now, the enemy team are in the process of capping B. They still hold C. They still have quite a serious points advantage. I mean, we are losing ships, and we're losing bigger ships than they're losing, but we're going to take this guy out. Look at those torpedoes going in. In fact, I'm not even going to bother firing. He's done. There we go. He's gone. So that's some points clawed back for us and some points deducted from the enemy team. And now I think I need to get my ass into gear and head towards B and see what I can do. So what problems do we have at this stage? Well, they have the points advantage and they have the base advantage. But we do have 1 more ship than they have. Now that's not a lot to play with, but as long as we can take B off them and maintain hold of A, we still have a good chance of winning this game. We just have to be careful not to lose many more ships, or if we do, then we have to start sinking more of theirs. Don't forget, when you're playing 3-point domination like this, then you gain points every time you sink an enemy ship, and you lose points when one of your ships is sunk, and vice versa. They do have a lot more points than we do, though. And I really shouldn't have wasted time shooting at that destroyer. because the Fuso, who has a lot of health, I mean, I still have a lot of health as well because I've been using my damage repair ability, but the Fuso is now sailing in range, and there he is. I'm switching fire to him, and my guns are about ready to reload. And this would have been a couple of well-aimed shots, if not for the fact that I'm not paying attention to what's going on around me. I'm thinking, where the hell did those shots go? And oh, great. And what did that island ever do to me? Tunnel vision can be a significant problem in World of Warships, more so than in World of Tanks, certainly in my experience. So, I'm bringing my rear gun batteries, well, my one surviving rear gun battery around, and this Fuso is in a good position to start broadsiding me. And yeah, I think he's firing at me. Is he firing at me? Well, I'm firing at him. Nope, that wasn't good. But I get a second series of shots out. We've just lost another 2 ships, by the way. There's only 4 of us left. So, but we are capping B. Now this is critical. Well, we were capping B. Now we're no longer capping B. Oh, great. Trying to get these guns reloaded. This is definitely aimed at me. And this guy obviously has a lot more guns than I do, and that's a nasty hit. It's a very, well, it could have been worse. It could have been substantially worse, but here come his other gun batteries, and they're all aimed at me as well. And that was a very, very nasty hit. I'm pretty sure that was a citadel penetration, but my damage repair ability is off cooldown. I instantly use it and recover a substantial portion of my health. Now there's an enemy destroyer, and, well, I'm focusing my secondary gun batteries on that destroyer. Hold down control and I click on him. As this Fuso starts opening up at me, and I'm losing more health, and I managed to get a couple of shots back at him. But I'm sailing right. Oh, citadel penetration, nearly 17,000 damage. And now I'm safe from him. Now he can't fire at me. So all I have to worry about is this battleship in front of me, the destroyer in front of me, and the cruiser that's shelling me from the right-hand side. So, yeah. But I've set the destroyer on fire. Or rather, my secondary gun batteries have set the destroyer on fire. Don't forget, with a secondary battery upgrade modification to your ship, these guns have a 6-kilometer range. So, and it's easy to avoid the torpedoes from a guy when you're steaming straight towards him. Now, I'm setting him as the priority target for my secondary gun batteries. And you do that by holding down control and clicking on the target. So I can safely ignore that guy now and concentrate my main battery fire on this Congo, who has very foolishly, while focusing on me, not noticed that he's about to run his ship aground. So that's making him a sitting duck. He's obviously still returning fire, and he is scoring some hits and he's doing some damage. There's the destroyer. He's actually apologising in chat for tickling me with his 130mm guns, but hey, the Warspite tickles back. And he's gone, and that's just my secondary gun batteries. Now, I've turned away from the destroyer, anticipating that he was going to launch torpedoes at me, but that gives me the opportunity, while presenting a smaller target to the Congo, it gives me the opportunity of trying to finish off this Fuso. We need to take him out of the game. It's 1 ship less shooting back at us. I've got 1 turret aimed at him. Good hit. Not enough to sink him, but he's gone. He is gone. That's an enemy battleship down. Now I'm sailing straight towards this Congo. Obviously I don't want to do that. I want to turn broadside on so I can maximise the amount of firepower that I'm directing towards him. And that's not a problem because the Warspite turns very, very quickly. We're both within secondary gun battery range of each other now, and just look at this. Lighten him up with a 15 inches, and oh, this is just epic stuff. We're both sailing into the cap circle. I'm not entirely sure whether he thought he was going to try to reverse into and ram me, but I don't fall for that trick twice. So I'm continuing the turn and making sure that we're not going to collide with each other while staying within secondary battery range, because the secondary batteries on the Warspite are doing a lot of damage. He's set me on fire. Yeah, it's no problem. Let's see how many of his gun turrets we can knock out. I'll have this fire under control in a few seconds. I'm taking light damage. And now what I'm actually doing here is I'm about to cross his T, which means he cannot fire his forward batteries at me. And as you can see, he's only got 1 rear gun battery, so that's only 2 14-inch guns that he can fire at me. And now his secondary batteries aren't able to fire at me until I get past him, and we've set him on fire. And oh, you absolute beauty. I believe I've just knocked out his single surviving rear gun turret. So all he can fire at me now is his secondary batteries. And my damage repair ability is back up again. I've used it. I'm still taking light damage, but he's on fire. My fire is out. Oh, he set me on fire again. Come on. Come on. He's got to go down. And there he goes. Wow, what a fight. I absolutely love this ship. I really, really do. I don't care that it only has 16.3 kilometer gun range. I don't care that it takes 72 seconds to turn the turrets around. If you're a battleship driver, you're already used to having to think 2 or 3 moves ahead. In the Warspite, you just have to think 4 or 5 moves ahead, and that's why it's not a newbie-friendly ship. It's definitely for experienced players only. I'm killing my speed now, by the way, because I want to make sure we cap a B, because if I don't, we're going to lose. And I don't want to run out of the cap circle. There's one cruiser behind me. They've got 2 cruisers left. We've actually managed to pull, well, if not the scores, we've now regained, and there we go, we're capped. We now have 3 ships against 2, but they have a lot of points, and we don't. Is controlling 2 bases going to be enough? I mean, I think I've done enough in this game. I don't really know what else I can be expected to do. If we can kill one more of their ships, that might be all that it takes to swing it again in our favour. One more kill, they would lose points and we would gain points. And we have the base advantage and we're catching up, but they're so far ahead. And oh, look at that Cleveland. Look at him on such low health. Where's he gone? If that guy can kill the Cleveland, we win. It's as close as that. This was such a good game. You know, at this point, I did start second-guessing myself and thinking, God damn it, if I wasn't in the Warspite, if I was in the Fuso, I would have been able to have the range to hit and kill that Cleveland and possibly win this game, because that's all it was going to take. But it's just not true. The Cleveland is behind an island. I don't have any line of sight to him. And by the time I do have a line of sight to him, he's in range of the Warspite's guns. So being in a different ship would not have made any difference to the outcome of this battle. Here he comes. Possibly I could have fired a shot earlier than I did and maybe hit. But the Warspite also has tighter shot dispersion than the Fuso does at that kind of range, and so, well, could have, should have, would have, didn't. We did in fact lose that match as the enemy team just crawled to 1,000 points before we did, but I really don't mind losing a game when it's as good as that. So well played to the enemy team, and I didn't do too badly out of it, even considering that it's a defeat. 271,000 credits and 1,600 experience on a defeat. That's not bad at all. Battle results? Not too bad. Spectacular game, by the way, for the captain of the Phoenix there at the top of the list. He got more experience on a defeat, and it's only a tier 4 cruiser than most of the enemy team got for winning. Well, in fact, as did I. And you'll note, by the way, that I fought all 4 of the enemy battleships, and 3 of them are Fusos, ships that everybody says are better than the Warspite, and yet I survived. And they didn't, so, Over 100,000 damage done, which is nice. 87,000 from the main 15-inch gun batteries, and over 15,000 damage done by the secondaries. So, the big question, should you get the Warspite? Well, I have no doubt that this ship is going to fly off the shelves, and it's going to sell like hotcakes, purely and simply because it's the first Royal Naval British warship to be introduced into the game. I have equally little doubt that a lot of people are going to be very, very disappointed with the performance of the ship, and this is why I say I would recommend the Warspite, definitely, but I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. If you're the kind of player that does not like taking damage, and instead prefers driving ships that avoid taking damage, then don't get the Warspite, because you will not like it. This ship takes a lot of damage, but it can take a lot of damage. If you're the kind of player who has never played Battleships before, then steer clear of this ship, because this is not the kind of ship that you want to be playing in order to learn how to drive battleships. This is a ship for experienced battleship players. You've probably guessed by now that I like the Warspite. And you're thinking, yeah, well, that's just Jingles for you. He likes the TOG2, and that's terrible. Well, yeah, I do like the TOG2, the Tier 6 British heavy tank in World of Tanks. But I like it because it's got character, not because it's any good. It isn't very good. The Warspite, on the other hand, well, it's definitely not bad. It's nowhere near as bad as everybody is claiming it to be. The problem with the Warspite is that it's just no good in the hands of somebody who doesn't have extensive experience at driving battleships in World of Warships. If you manage to tick those boxes, you can do very, very well indeed in this ship. If you don't tick those boxes, then don't waste your money on this ship. If you absolutely definitely have to have a British warship in your lineup, then just be patient and wait and see what they do with the next one. But if you are an experienced battleship player, or just an experienced World of Warships player in general, then yes, I do recommend the Warspite. I am not that good a battleship player, but I have had some fantastic games in this thing. And if I can do it, well, you can too. So I'm giving a cautious thumbs up to HMS Warspite, the grand old lady, veteran of Jutland, Matapan, D-Day, you name it. She's been there, she's seen it, she's done it, and she's got the scars to prove it. She might be short, fat and ugly, but she's as tough as old boots. This ship can dish it out, and it can take it. And I've had a lot of fun playing it. And I hope you do too. So, that's it for today's video. HMS Warspite, the grand old lady. The first Royal Naval British warship to be implemented into World of Warships. I hope you enjoyed the video, folks. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.